Griezmann is done with Atletico, but what's behind his emotional farewell? Florentino Perez cooking up a crazy swap deal involving Liverpool's stars. Will the Reds actually agree to this? Barcelona locked down Rashford with a contract through 2030. Van de Ven on his way out of Tottenham, and one club is already leading the chase. Inter Milan suddenly going after Liverpool's defensive rock. All this and much more in today's episode. Let's try to hit 200 likes on this video and we'll be back tomorrow with more transfer madness. Smash that like button and let's dive in. Barcelona are ready to make Marcus Rashford's move permanent. The loan chapter is officially wrapping up, and it's ending exactly as he would have hoped. According to Sport, Deco recently sat down in Barcelona with Rashford's lead agent, Arturo Canales, to hash out a permanent transfer. The loan deal includes a €30 million buyout clause. And let's be honest, in today's market, that is an unbelievable steal for a player of his caliber. Initially, the Barca hierarchy wasn't completely convinced. They wanted to wait and see how he'd handle the immense pressure of the Camp Nou. After all, his final few months in Manchester were, quite frankly, a disaster. But Marcus didn't take long to put those doubts to bed. When Rafinha was sidelined with an injury, Rashford was thrown into the starting 11, and he truly delivered. He settled in seamlessly, and the Catalans saw exactly what they needed to see. Now, they're ready to pull the trigger. Barcelona have reportedly offered Rashford a contract running until 2030, and the two sides are very close to getting it done. It turns out that huge dip in form at Manchester United was exactly that, just a temporary dip. The Camp Nou has completely brought his confidence back. For Manchester United, this is a fascinating situation. Sure, they're getting €30 million for a player they essentially pushed out the door. That's cash in the bank. But watching your own academy product rediscover his prime at another European giant, that is always a bitter pill to swallow. Still, there's not much left to say. Rashford desperately needed a reset, and he found the perfect one. Antoine Griezmann looks like he's already packing his bags. The Athletic is reporting that the Frenchman is on the very brink of a move to MLS, Orlando City to be specific. And these aren't just early talks. Negotiations are at a highly advanced stage and incredibly close to being finalized. What's more, the Americans clearly don't want to wait for the summer window. Orlando's sporting director Ricardo Moreira has already flown to Madrid, and the club is pushing to get Griezmann through the door within the coming weeks so he can link up with the squad as quickly as possible. Let me remind you, Antoine's current contract with Atleti runs until 2027, so there's simply no way he's leaving on a free, and Atletico will most likely expect to pocket a decent fee from the sale. We don't have exact numbers on wages or the transfer sum just yet, but let's look at the market. Right now, the Frenchman is valued at around €11 million. For reference, at his very peak, he was worth a staggering €150 million. See the difference? Oh, it's a huge difference. Roughly the same difference as easily tapping like on your phone. And the obstacle course TV viewers have to run just to find that button. Big screen gang, I know how much you dread digging through the couch cushions for that remote. But please, don't let this channel's analytics plummet as hard as Antoine's price tag. Summon your willpower, hit that like button, and prove that your support is worth way more than €11 million. And here's where a slightly sad thought creeps in. With all due respect to Griezmann, you can't shake the feeling that he never fully lived up to his enormous, generational talent. Remember his first run at Atletico after arriving from Real Sociedad? The guy was unplayable, genuinely one of the top 3 players in the world. And then, Barcelona happened. That transfer flat out killed his momentum. He never managed to nail down a spot at Camp Nou despite all the noise around that deal under Ernesto Valverde. Frankly, that entire era at Barca wrecked more than one top player's career. The club was drowning in coaching chaos, and the board didn't even understand what kind of football they wanted to play or who they needed to play it. All that dysfunction took a direct toll on the players, and Antoine, sadly, was no exception. Now, you can't say he failed after returning to Madrid. Not at all. Diego Simeone found a spot for him again, and Griezmann has been a major contributor. But that dazzling electric version of the Frenchman? We only really saw it in flashes, in scattered moments. Had it not been for that ill-fated move to Catalonia, his career could have gone in a completely different, historic direction. But the Frenchman is 34 now. Nobody is thinking long-term anymore. He is leaving as a true legend of the club and the all-time leading scorer in Atletico's history with 210 goals. That is a record nobody can ever take away from him. One way or another, he's heading off to see out his playing days. And MLS right now is the ideal stage to bow out beautifully. All that's left is to wish him luck. I'm highly confident he can still make some serious noise in the States and deliver a couple of box office seasons. Arsenal are looking to tie Declan Rice down to a bumper new contract. The club's hierarchy has already initiated preliminary contact with his camp and intends to move into concrete negotiations very soon. As a reminder, Rice cost the Gunners £105 million. At the time, that was a club record fee, and all signs point to it being money incredibly well spent. Working under Mikel Arteta, he has evolved into one of the finest midfielders on the planet. And that's not just biased supporter sentiment, that is the genuine, overwhelming belief inside the club itself. His existing deal runs until June 2028, and he's currently on roughly £240,000 a week. On the surface, you might think, where's the urgency? But Arsenal want to get out in front of this. They want to protect their investment well in advance. The very last thing Berta and Arteta need is to reach the final year of his contract and have unwanted speculation about a possible exit creeping into the media. From what we know, the club is prepared to put a brand new 5-year deal on the table. And the most important detail here is that Rice himself doesn't appear eager to leave anytime soon. He is genuinely satisfied working under Arteta, happy with his own development, and fully buys into the direction of the project. His representatives are completely receptive to negotiations. So it looks like both parties are aligned and ready to wrap this up without any fuss. In terms of what he brings on the pitch, Declan does far more for Arsenal than simply breaking up the opponent's play. He dictates the rhythm, provides vital cover for the backline during defensive transitions, and adds pure composure when the pressure mounts. Take him out of the starting 11 and Arsenal's midfield looks like an entirely different, far more vulnerable unit. It's players like him who keep a team competing at the highest level across a grueling 10-month season. If this renewal goes through smoothly, it will send an incredibly strong statement to the rest of the market. Arsenal will effectively be declaring that they're not just competing for trophies right now, they are building a dynasty with real long-term ambition. Declan Rice is the ultimate cornerstone of that project, and the club clearly recognizes it. Andrea Cambiasso has officially become the hottest commodity on the fullback market. His value has skyrocketed, and now Europe's elite are lining up for his signature. According to Caught Offside, Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Manchester City are all keeping a very close eye on the Italian. Juventus, of course, are playing hardball, insisting they won't sell their prized talent. But let's be honest, we all know how this game works. Put 60 to 70 million euros on the table and the Turin club might just have a sudden change of heart. Here's the thing, Cambiasso is the textbook definition of a modern system player. He's not just bombing up and down the touchline. He's a highly versatile operator who comfortably covers both defensive flanks and, when the situation calls for it, drifts into central midfield to help dictate play. Skills like that are worth their weight in gold right now, and nobody appreciates that more than Pep Guardiola. The Man City boss has a serious soft spot for defenders with a high football IQ who thrive on the ball under pressure. But the competition isn't sitting around. Liverpool are overhauling their backline, and the Merseyside outfit is crying out for fresh blood. Real Madrid are keeping tabs too. Los Blancos view the Italian as a superb rotation option and a long-term squad upgrade. Cambiasso's flexibility would give any manager at the Bernabeu the freedom to plug tactical gaps without any drop in quality. For the old lady, though, it's a major dilemma. Internally, Cambiasso is seen as untouchable. They call him a long-term cornerstone of the project and even picture him as a future captain. He's under contract until 2029, and his €2.4 million salary barely makes a dent in the wage bill. Sounds like the perfect marriage, right? But here's the reality check. Juventus desperately needs cash to bolster their attack. They are dreaming of landing a top-tier striker and their budget isn't infinite. Cashing in on Cambiasso at a hefty premium could be the exact lever they need to pull off a blockbuster signing. In the winter window, Juve already rejected offers around the €50 million mark, but once summer hits, the bidding war is going to catch fire all over again. If Juventus holds steady and secure Champions League football, Andrea will probably stay put. But if a giant like City or Real creeps towards that €70 million valuation, the Juve board might have no choice but to sacrifice their future captain to fund their immediate ambitions. Paulo Dybala's camp is currently in talks with Boca Juniors. That's according to Matteo Moretto. Roma, for their part, wouldn't mind keeping him, but they're only offering a new deal on reduced terms. And naturally, that doesn't sit well with the Argentine. Boca, on the other hand, are willing to meet his demands, within reason, of course. So, the pieces are slowly falling into place. Right now, Dybala is valued at around €5 million. In modern transfer market terms, that's total pocket change. But remember, at his peak, his price tag hit €110 million, and those weren't just fancy numbers on paper. There was genuine huge demand for him among Europe's heavyweights. Manchester United, Liverpool, they all had their eyes on Paulo. But time and time again, he chose to stay put. First at Juventus, then at Roma. It felt like Italy just wouldn't let him go. And this is where that adopted Italian mentality probably plays a part. Dybala moved to Serie A as a teenager. He essentially grew up in the country. And whether they're born there or just adopt the culture, players who fall in love with Italian life are notoriously reluctant to leave their comfort zone. Paulo was clearly no exception. Even when he left Juve and could have easily gone to the Premier League or La Liga, he chose Roma. With all due respect to the Giallorossi, from a pure career standpoint, that was far from the most ambitious move. Better options were out there, but he chose the familiar path. The potential he had was enormous. There's a reason people used to compare him to Lionel Messi. The same silky technique, the same ability to decide a game with a single touch of his left foot, but it never quite translated into elite consistency. Injuries, wasted seasons, unfulfilled expectations, and now, Boca Juniors. If the move goes through, it'll be a beautiful, poetic ending. A passionate club for a fiercely passionate player. A homecoming to Argentina, where he'll be adored simply for being who he is. And yet, it's hard not to feel a little sad that we never got to see La Gioia test himself in another top league. It always felt like he was made for something bigger, but apparently, he never saw it that way. Inter Milan have suddenly turned their attention back to Ibrahima Konate. Caught Offside reports that the Nerazzurri are paying very close attention to the Liverpool defender's contract situation, and frankly, their interest is incredibly easy to understand. His name has been sitting on their shortlist for some time, and they even tried to make a move for him in the winter window, but the stars just didn't align. Right now, Inter have a very specific summer plan. Get younger without dropping in quality. They're not looking for raw youngsters. They want proven performers with big game experience, and Konate ticks every single box. Quick, tall, aggressive, and self-assured. That's the exact profile the club needs to balance their backline. But here's what's really tempting for the Italians. The possibility of getting him on a free transfer. If Ibao doesn't renew his deal, he could arrive at San Siro at zero cost. Financially speaking, that would be a total masterstroke. Think about it, landing a top-class prime-age center-back without paying a single penny in transfer fees? That is every sporting director's dream. Here's where it gets tricky though. Liverpool know the risks perfectly well. Over the last few seasons, Konate has become a crucial piece next to Virgil van Dijk, bringing that dominant physical presence they sometimes lack. Letting an asset of his caliber walk for free would be a huge management blunder. That is exactly why the Reds are putting maximum pressure on the player right now, desperately trying to lock down a new agreement. Negotiations are underway, but there's still nothing official, and time is definitely not on the Merseyside club's side. The closer we get to the summer, the more bargaining power the player holds. And here comes the main headache for Inter, Real Madrid. The Spanish Giants could have major openings left by David Alaba and Antonio Rudiger this summer, and they will desperately need top-tier cover. Konate is firmly on their radar, and let's be brutally honest here. If Madrid decide to get serious about this race, Inter will struggle badly to match them on salary. The Frenchman's world-class ability to contain top strikers in one-on-one situations makes him one of the most prized targets on the entire market. So Liverpool need to move fast. They're staring at two very uncomfortable outcomes right now. Either they lose a key defender for practically nothing, or they get dragged into a brutal wage auction that's going to be incredibly hard to win. Tottenham Hotspur and Mickey van de Ven. This is a story that has danger written all over it, and it could get really ugly. According to Team Talk, Spurs are nowhere near extending the Dutch defender's contract. Talks have been officially put on ice until the summer. Why? Because the club is dealing with something far more urgent right now: basic survival in the Premier League. The original plan was completely different. Tottenham intended to bump Van de Ven's wages up to the same bracket as Christian Romero and Conor Gallagher, the highest earners at the club. In other words, the board recognized the player's immense value and was fully prepared to put their money where their mouth is. But then, everything went sideways. This season has been a total disaster. Stability is non-existent, and strategic, long-term planning has taken a back seat. Survival comes first. Contracts come later. Here's the catch though, Van de Ven himself no longer seems all that keen on staying. Sources close to the defender say he's actively exploring his options and has genuine doubts about the direction this club is heading. When you're one of the few players actually dragging the team forward and there is complete chaos all around you, doubts creep in. His blistering recovery pace, his bite in challenges, his pure calm on the ball, all of it was essentially papering over the cracks of Tottenham's systemic issues. The Dutchman was using his own individual brilliance to mask just how poorly constructed this team really is. And honestly, that tells you more about his undeniable quality than any statistic ever could. And right on cue, Real Madrid appear. Los Blancos have already gathered intel on the defender's contract status and are watching the situation very closely. And let's be real, when the most decorated club in the history of football comes knocking, players pay attention. That's not up for debate, that's just a fact. For Tottenham, losing a player of his caliber isn't just a glaring hole in the squad, it's the same old painful cycle repeating itself. The club nurtures a talented footballer, molds him into a world-class player, and then watches him walk away at the worst possible time. Modric, Bale, Kane before him, and now, potentially, Van de Ven. Spurs turned into a stepping stone for ambitious players a long time ago, and frankly, they don't seem to be doing much to change that narrative. Putting talks on ice sends a terrible message. The player can clearly see that during the club's darkest hour, Tottenham isn't rushing to show commitment. Real Madrid, however, are. While Spurs battle terrifying relegation fears, Madrid are quietly setting the stage. Let's see if Tottenham can miraculously turn this around in the summer, or if they'll once again lose what they spent years building. Real Madrid and Liverpool could be about to pull off a deal that would completely blow up the market. Let's get straight to it. According to Spanish sources, specifically the outlet Fichajes, Madrid are actively exploring the option of sending Rodrigo the other way and bringing in Dominik Szoboszlai from Anfield. Sounds a bit crazy? Yeah, but let's break it down because the logic here is actually rock solid. Almost as rock solid as the fact that half of you watch these videos regularly, but dodge the subscribe button like it's asking to borrow money. Seriously guys, sort yourselves out, hit the button, and let's get back to Real Madrid. Let's start with Real's perspective. Why would Florentino Perez even want this? Well, if you've been watching Los Blancos this season, you know perfectly well the team has a clear lack of creativity and quality ball progression through midfield. Madrid desperately need a midfielder who can add dynamism, attacking sharpness, and confidently carry the ball through the opposition's lines. And that's exactly where Szoboszlai pops up on the scouting radar. The Hungarian is at his absolute prime right now. Seriously, even when Liverpool as a whole go through rough patches, Dominik is a machine on the pitch. He works relentlessly, box to box. He's got an absolute cannon of a shot, and his vision is top tier. At Valdebebas, they particularly value his warrior mentality. At Real, he wouldn't just be another squad rotation option. He would be a structural, fundamental upgrade to their entire midfield. The only problem? Liverpool's hierarchy understands this just as well. The Hungarian has become a huge fan favorite. The club is completely relaxed about his immediate future, and right now, they're preparing a massive new contract to satisfy his financial appetite and fend off any advances from Spain. Now let's look at this from the English side. Why would Liverpool even want Rodrigo? This one's actually pretty straightforward. Arne Slot and the club's leadership have been planning a major upgrade on both attacking flanks for quite some time. Liverpool need top-level wingers. Interest in the Brazilian was visible last summer, and the rumors kept popping up again in January. And Rodrigo himself is in a very particular position at the Santiago Bernabeu right now. With Kylian Mbappe's arrival, and with Vinicius and Jude Bellingham being untouchable, it's objectively getting a bit crowded in that starting 11. Rodrigo is a world-class, incredibly versatile forward, but he is highly unlikely to want to play second fiddle forever. So, a move to England looks like a perfectly reasonable career step for him. And it's in this exact context that the idea of a straight swap gets thrown into the press. On paper, it's a dream deal, a clear win-win for both sides. Real get a dynamic midfielder in his absolute prime, and Liverpool grab a top-tier talent, plugging a potential gap in their attack. But we live in the real world. Direct swaps of this scale between football superpowers are always a logistical and financial nightmare. Neither club is going to let their key asset go cheap. Real will definitely slap a staggering price tag on Rodrigo, and Liverpool will do exactly the same with Szoboszlai. Matching those valuations is virtually impossible. Most likely, if any real market moves do happen, the clubs will have to negotiate two completely separate deals. It's incredibly hard to imagine Anfield's midfield star leaving right now. But Rodrigo's seriously starting to look for greener pastures outside Madrid this summer? That is a very, very likely scenario.